3. Hi everyone, welcome to my Mediation and Beyond YouTube channel where we talk about all things relationships, parenting, divorce, marriage, everything in the kitchen sink. And today I'm really honored to have Dr. Jane Nelsen. You'll see her book, Parents Who Love Too Much, behind me. It was a pretty powerful book when I read it. I think it was back in 2000 or somewhere around there. As a single mom back then, it was very helpful. And so Dr. Jane Nelsen's the mother of 7 children and the grandmother of 22 grandchildren and 16 great-grandchildren. That's amazing. And the wife of a very supportive Barry. She's a licensed marriage, family, and child therapist and the author and co-author of 22 books, including Positive Discipline Parenting Tools with 2 of her children, Brad and Mary, and her latest book, Positive Discipline for Today's Busy and Overwhelmed Parent, which who can't relate to that, right? Jane taught child development at California Community College and was an elementary school counselor for 10 years. Her doctorate degree is in educational psychology from the University of San Francisco and is a secondary to the education and experience she achieved from her success and failures as a mother of 7 children. And she now learns from the thousands of certified positive discipline trainers and parents and teachers who share their success and stories from all over the world. And really, that's the whole point of kind of this, is like learning from each other. So Jane, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So what 22 books, I think, are all your books in the parenting and relationship arena, or are they kind of spread out?
Well, they're all in mostly positive discipline series, except I have one that's called Serenity. That's very different, but yes, because when I first just wrote Positive Discipline, and then people started saying, well, this is also applicable to single parents. That was the first one that came up, and it took my single parent friend over a year to convince me that I should write that one just for their language. And then the Positive is for teens, and it just kept coming that people would say, well, this applies to this too, but we need to hear it in our language.
Absolutely. So the positive discipline part, like, does it overarching, what got you thinking in that mindset, like about, it kind of almost can be an oxymoron, discipline and positive. They kind of sometimes go against each other, you would think, right? So how did that come about?
Well, I did it on purpose and did not realize how effective it actually would be, because most people think of discipline and punishment. And so they would come thinking that they were going to learn how to do punishment in a positive discipline way, in a positive way. And they would say, no punishment at all. And, of course, you can't tell people not to use punishment if you don't tell them what else to do. So I think that one of the main things about these books is that they're so full of how-tos, not just what-tos, but how-tos.
So you actually give concrete examples of how to use positive discipline.
Yes. And the other thing is, too, though, is how important it is. I just really like to mention in everyone, it's like, do you think that if you learn these tools that your kids will be perfect? And of course they won't. Or do you think you'll be perfect if you learn to apply them all? You won't. And so this is why I would like to say I learned from successes and failures. And the reason I wrote so many books is because I kept failing.
Or learning, right?
Yeah. Well, see, that's one of the things that we say is one of our most famous quotes is that mistakes are wonderful opportunities to learn.
Yes.
And for us and our children.
Mm-hmm.
And to get rid of that idea that, there's mistakes are something to be ashamed of. They mean I'm not good enough. I don't want anybody to know. Instead of just saying, whoops. And of course, you really learn to apologize a lot. And I always like to ask parents, what do your children say when you say you're sorry?
And what do most kids say? Thank you. Or
they say, that's okay. That's okay.
You didn't mean it. I know. Like, kids are very forgiving.
Yes. Yeah.
Kids are. So what are some examples of positive discipline? Can you give like a couple of examples of what that might look like for somebody?
You know, one of my favorite examples, but first of all, you know, when I say no punishment, and I mean no timeout, no taking away privileges, no, not physical or emotional punishment at all. No
So
lectures.
like no taking away the cell phone, no
Right.
taking away the iPad or the computer.
Well, you know, when we come to screens, that's a different matter.
Is it?
Yeah, because let's save that for a little bit later, but I will tell you why. Screens are an addiction. And so they really require different rules than when you're not under the influence, and they are definitely addiction. But so one of the ways I like to illustrate it is, suppose your child comes home and says they've lost their baseball mitt. Now, what do most parents do? Well, first they give them the lecture. Well, I've told you to be more responsible. If you don't put things away and if you don't take care of them, then you're just, and I'm just so tired of you being irresponsible. But I'll tell you something, I'm not going to buy you another one. You just need to suffer. Maybe that'll teach you.
Mm-hmm.
And then within 10 or 20 minutes, they're in the car taking them to buy another mitt, saying, well, okay, I'll buy you another one this time, but it's the last time because you've got to learn to be responsible. And you know what the child has learned is, I don't really have to be responsible. I just have to sit through the lecture. So then I say, well, what would you do in positive discipline? Your child comes home, they say they've lost their mitt, and you say, oh, I'm so sorry. That's the hardest thing, then do nothing.
And do nothing.
I'm so sorry.
Do we get another mitt? Do we just do nothing? You wait on it?
You just say nothing. And
wow.
And then the child will say, but I'm, you know, and if the thing is, you don't lecture, you don't jump in to rescue, and that doesn't mean the conversation really has to end there. They say, well, what am I going to do? I said, I don't know, but I bet you can figure it out. But Mom, you know, it's really hard.
Well, that's just a shift. I mean, because really you want to give the lecture and then solve it.
Right.
Well, let me give you the lecture about being responsible. And now I'm going to go solve about how I'm going to take care of the responsibility, right? I'm going to get in the car and I'm going to go take you and get you a new mitt. So just kind of, you know, it almost seems too simple, Jane.
I know. But you know, that isn't really quite the end of the story, because the thing is that you, but by just letting them have their feelings and even validating their feelings, you know, what they keep going to say, I know that's really hard.
Yeah.
But you avoid the temptation to jump in and rescue. And we have another concept called connection before correction. And so just by validating their feelings and letting them have them, that's part of the connection. And then part of the correction is to help get them involved. You know, like, so after you've said nothing and you've validated their feelings and they're still feeling bad, say, well, you know, when you calm down, I would be willing to brainstorm with you what you could do. And then you still have to keep your mouth shut. What are your ideas? What do you think you can do? Rather than telling them. Of course, you know, if you really just stayed out of it and say, I'm just sorry, honey, and I'm sure you can figure it out, 9 out of 10 times they will figure it out. They'll go borrow a mitt from somebody else, or they'll find their old one. They'll try harder to find it. But I think that's what's so hard for us to do, is to have faith in our children. And that doesn't mean you're not teaching them skills, but then to have faith in their ability to deal with their feelings and to find solutions.
Well, you know, I think that as I'm listening to, I think that what I'm like, for my own self, I'm thinking, well, a good mom or a good parent, you're taught, you know, you take care of your children, you fix it, you make things nice for them, you want them to have a happy life and not have, you know, to deal with the many things that they end up dealing with. But I hear what you're saying, there's no lesson in that, really.
Well, you know, the thing is that we think that in positive discipline, well, actually in all human beings, the primary goal is to belong and to feel significant. Now, a lot of parents, you can give them belonging. Love is belonging. You can give them that, but you cannot give them significance. You have to teach them the skills to develop their significance through feeling capable, through feeling responsible, through contribution. And kids don't like that necessarily until they grow up and they think, I didn't realize my mom was teaching me all these things that are serving me so well now. You know, when people say, well, my kids don't want to do their chores, I say, did you when you were a kid? No. Does that mean that you don't scold them? You just say, I know, but we'll sit down and have a family meeting and we'll figure out when they're going to be done. And, you know, like my daughter, I was talking to her and then she says, I really did not realize that so many of the things that I was objecting to were teaching me things like family meetings. See, I just think that family meetings are just one of the most important things you can do, where kids are learning to solve problems. You know, what's the solution?
Mm-hmm.
And she says, I'll just skip to tell this story. It's so funny because kids love this from the time they're about 4 years old. And, you know, developmentally, something happens in the brain with 4 years old where they're just really good at solving problems and they want to, and too often we take that away from them by doing it for them in the name of love. And so they loved family meetings until they became teenagers, and then it became stupid. You know? I say, I know, but you know, it's important to me, so we'll just shorten them, but we still need to do them. And one day she went to stay overnight with a friend, and she came back the next day and said, oh, that family is so screwed up. They should be having family meetings. And then when she went off to college, and she still has friends today because they had family meetings as roommates so that they would, instead of being irritated about who ate my food in the refrigerator and who left their dishes in the sink and who's on the phone, you know, they would solve these problems together.
And in the family meetings, everyone comes together and you kind of highlight what's going on with everybody. And
well, you have an agenda, and it's on the fridge or someplace where everybody can see it. And so often when there is a problem, you put it on the agenda, like chores, you know.
Yeah.
That's always a problem. So you put it on the agenda, and then people, just by seeing it, sometimes they think, oh yeah, you know, they might start to solve the problem. But you start with compliments, where everybody learns to look for the good and appreciate it and verbalize it. And then you brainstorm for solutions, and you get as many as you can. You know, you have fun with them. Say, well, we could hire a maid, or we could throw out the dishes instead of washing them, and then you go back and you eliminate the ones that are not respectful, reasonable, and related.
Okay.
So, and they have fun doing that. But, you know, one woman said to me, well, we had a family meeting and the kids did their chores for a week, but then it went right back to a problem. And I said, well, have you found anything else that worked for a whole week? And she said, no. I said, okay, so then just have another family meeting. And I would say that family meeting chores would come up for us for, if not every week, every 3 or 4. And we would just come up with a new solution, you know, from choosing the chores out of a hat to making a chore chart to, you know, my son's family came up with a really good idea. They had a die, and they would throw the die, and each dice represented a chore. And I forget which one meant free day. But so the kids would come home and they would throw their dice to see what their major chore was for the day.
That's a great idea. That's a great, but you know, at least if you're revisiting that on a weekly basis, then you at least know the chores are getting done that week. It's like you just keep coming back to it.
And you also accept that kids are not going to like their chores, and they still need to learn to do them because they're part of the family. And it's just what we do as social beings. We all contribute. And that's why, you know, when I said the significance part is you learn to be significant through contribution, through responsibility, through feeling capable. And parents have to give kids the opportunities to develop those. You can't give it to them.
Yeah, I guess that's the part where we have to sit back and kind of zip it a little bit and let them struggle or let them figure it out, right? Instead of always jumping in. I know that's something that I had to watch myself with, just the jumping in and wanting to solve it. And also to know that I could get it done probably a whole lot quicker, which would then speed things along to get on to the next thing, right? So.
Oh, yeah. My son tells the funnest story about that when he was trying to make sure that about even to have his daughter feed the dog. and how much more trouble was because she would spill when she was dishing it up, and she'd spill taking it to him, she'd spill all the way. It would have been so much easier to do it himself. But we do it for their benefit, not for ours.
Mm-hmm. Now, is the positive discipline, when you talk about it, like for single moms versus like, you know, parents or two family, but is it all similar, or are there really big differences, like for, would you say, single parents versus, you know, a mom and dad in the house, or two parents in the house?
I think that the basic principles are the same. You know, in fact, I want to tell you, Colleen, one of the reasons that positive discipline has become popular all over the world, and it has, we now have certified trainers. I think there's something like 10,000 of them in China.
Wow.
And,
So you have a certification program for,
yes.
Okay.
Yes, and we have certified trainers all over the world, and in Spain, and you know, Europe, France, and Latin America a lot, Poland, and it's just all over the world. Egypt has become really big,
Wow.
and so, you know, since there's all different cultures and all different religions and races, and so we might have to change the language just a little bit. But we do experiential activities so that they are role playing, being the child or being the parent. And so I could give you an example. One of our activities that we do is learning to ask questions instead of tell. So instead of go brush your teeth, it's what do you need to do so your teeth will feel clean? And for teachers, they might say something different. They would say, you know, clean up your desk, or what do you need to do before you go to recess? You know, it's like drawing forth instead of stuffing in. And so you might change, and you would ask different questions for a 4-year-old than you would a teenager. But the point is you draw forth instead of stuffing in.
Interesting. That's an interesting concept too, because then they come up with, like, it goes back to what you were saying earlier, then they come up with the idea. They problem solve. Here's our problem, brushing your teeth, right? But how can you solve that for your right self?
And see, if you think of a morning when parents are, hurry up and get dressed, brush your teeth, you're going to miss the bus. And we say things like, what do you need to do so you can catch the bus on time? And, you know, this is physiology. What we love now, though, I have to tell you, Colleen, is that now that they're doing neuroscience on the brain.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the things that I said in one of my books a long time ago that's a favorite quote is that children do better when they feel better. You know, and it's, where did we ever get the crazy idea that in order to get children to do better, first we have to make them feel worse? And it's crazy, and yet that's what all punishment is based on, the idea that if we make them feel worse, then they'll do better. And so this idea, but when we say they do better when they feel better, that does not mean by spoiling them. It means by helping them to feel capable and responsible and contributing. But when you say to a child, go brush your teeth, physiologically, if you were paying attention, your body would get a little stiff, and the message that goes to the brain is resist. But if you say respectfully, what do you need to do so your teeth will be clean? The brain, the physiologically, again, you kind of relax because you've been talked to respectfully. And the message that goes to the brain is search for an answer. And while you're searching for an answer, you're feeling capable, you're feeling respected. Now, of course, nothing works all the time and nothing's appropriate, but we just, the whole idea is always to help children learn that they feel both that connection of belonging and significance.
Which is completely different than how we've been taught to parent.
Right.
Really?
And see, like in China, you know, this is a really good example, because in China, quite often the parents, you know, I do believe that all parents do what they do in the name of love. They think it's the best way to help their children. And they were so desperate to have their children succeed that they thought that beating them into doing what they were supposed to. And so we have so many of them who say, we were beaten to do our homework, and we didn't do our homework. We say, do you mean spanked? And they say, oh, no, we were beaten. And
wow.
And so this is, you know, I don't know if you heard of the book Tiger Mom.
Yes, I've not read it, but I have heard of that, yes.
But just the whole concept is that the Tiger Mom's going to make you do it and you're going to do it. And so these kids will grow up feeling significant. They will contribute, they will be responsible, but they won't feel loved. And on the other hand, if you're a helicopter mom and you do everything for your child, those children will feel loved, but they won't feel responsible. They won't feel capable. They won't feel significant.
That's very true. I never really thought about the helicopter and tiger, and they both serve their purpose, but it's not in a holistic way. You don't get, don't get the whole person.
They're extremes, and so often people think that all there is, you're either punishment or you're permissive. Mm-hmm. And yet, see, positive discipline is that middle of saying, no, there's something in the middle, and it's to be both kind and firm. And the kind is the belonging, and the firm is helping them learn significance. And firm doesn't have to be mean. You know, so many people think of firm as, yeah, that's mean. No, to say, you know, I love you, and the answer is no.
Yes, right.
And I know you don't want to do your chores, and you need to be done. Mm-hmm. Would you like to do it now or in 10 minutes?
Yeah, no, tone, I always say tone is everything.
Absolutely.
Really, really matters. No one else, when I heard you talking about your certification program and it's global, but this concept is global. I mean, parenting is global, but positive discipline, it doesn't matter a cultural really background.
Exactly. And, you know, so often in other cultures, they think that they're either too permissive or too firm. But, you know, one of the things that we do that really establishes the cultural similarities is that at the beginning of every class or workshop, we have everybody create a list of what the challenges they have. And they're the same. Kids who won't do their chores, you know, kids who don't do their homework.
They won't go to bed.
they fight with each other. Yeah, they're the same. And it's just amazing. And then we do a list of characteristics and life skills they hope their children will develop to be, you know, that will serve them through life. And those are the same. They want them to be kind and capable and learners. You know, it's a big, long list of what they want for their children. But what we then are able to show with every experiential activity we do, we ask the parents when they've role played, or kids, look at this list of characteristics, life skills. Are you learning any of these? And you know, when they're being parented either permissively or with punishment, they're not learning those so much as, but then we say, are you feeling like doing some of the challenges? And they say yes. But when they're experience the positive discipline methods, which are always kind and firm, then they say, yes, they are learning those characteristics and life skills.
And obviously you have 7 children. Have your children implemented in their own families your positive discipline? I mean, so that you can actually see like how it's worked or get, you know, feedback on that.
Yes. And to different degrees, you know, I have what I call my before, during, and after children.
What is that?
Before I learned about this, and the ones that were, I think it was 3, 5, and 7 when I was learning, and then the ones that came after. And actually it was with the ones that came after, one that came after and one that came during, Brad and Mary, that we wrote the positive discipline parenting tools.
Okay.
Where Mary had younger children and Brad had teenagers. And, you know, one of the things that we talk about is this does not mean we did them perfectly or that we were perfect or our kids were perfect. Right. But yeah, they use them.
So then, and did you get feedback? Do you hear feedback about the from people all over the world, like these tools work, like it's made such a difference?
Do you know, the thing that I hear more than anything else wherever I go is, you changed my life. And I say, no, I didn't. But usually the people who I see a lot of are the people who are training others. And I say, how often do you hear that from the people you teach? And they say, yeah, we hear it a lot.
Wow.
So it is these concepts that And you know, one of the reasons that it's become so popular and that our people want to be trained and share it with others is that it fits for them. They say, oh, this is what makes sense. I didn't want to be permissive, but I didn't want to be use punishment. But not knowing well it's what to do, we usually vacillate. You know, I would be permissive till I couldn't stand my kids, and then I'd be punishing until I couldn't stand myself. And so, and this doesn't mean that everybody accepts it. You know, we still hear people, well, I was punished and I turned out fine. And so I learned a long time ago, I'm not going to try and teach anybody who doesn't want to learn. But if they're,
yeah, you have to be open to wanting something different. So Jane, what do you do with let's say the 14-year-old boy who is mouthing off to you? You're a mom, your son's mouthing off, and then you're taking the iPad or you're taking the phone, and it doesn't seem to be effective. What is, like, if someone's watching this right now and they're like, I have a 13, 14-year-old and they mouth off a little bit and they get ornery, but I take things, that never works. We butt heads, that never works. And what is something that, like, a takeaway that they may be able to do?
Oh, I wish I could find, I probably could, you know, we have an activity for that.
Oh, okay.
And it's called Don't Back Talk Back. And what is so fun about it is that I have a whole bunch of statements that are parents the kids back talk, and they say, don't talk to me that way, young lady.
Yes.
Or you're going to be grounded. Or where do you think that smart mouth's going to take you? Or, you know, we do all these things. And this would be an example. We'd say, okay, pretend you're a child who's just backtalked and I say those things to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I say, so then we give some other statements. And I would still say to you, boy, I can see you're really angry. Or would you like to talk about it? Let me know when you're ready. Or I wonder what I said that made you so upset. Or, you know, it's like for us to come back kindly, it just makes all the difference in what they want to do.
So it doesn't escalate it, it kind of calms it right down right there, because you're saying, like, when a parent comes back in a positive, kind way, looking to maybe problem solve, then the child doesn't really have anybody to argue with, right?
It's the connection piece. It's the we have a deck of cards that has 52 tool cards in it. You know, so we can say, when we say no punishment, what else is there? Well, they can sometimes just draw a card, and one of those is, of course, one is the being kind and firm at the same time, or connection before correction. But don't talk back.
I love that.
Validate feelings is such an important one. You know, sometimes if you just validate a child's feelings and let them have them until they're finished.
Yeah, until they're finished, right? And not them to be finished in our time frame, right? We always want to rush that along, get over it, right?
Right. And one of my favorites is, is control your own behavior. You know, how can you expect children to control their behavior when you don't control your own? Very
good point. Or I don't want you talking there. Don't yell at me like that while you're yelling.
Exactly. So modeling is like, take a look at what you're modeling.
Gotcha. And we had said earlier about you were talking about the internet being an addiction right now. And I think especially during COVID, right? I mean, these children don't have the time to play sports, and they're not as occupied as they once were, or just to socialize. How do you help parents with that? Because I hear a lot of angst with parents. They don't want their kids on social media, but then there's a lot of bickering about it when they want to take them off.
You know, we have an ebook on that called Help, My Child is Addicted to Screens. Yikes, so am I. And, you know, it's just that, just as in most examples, we try and get the child involved instead of telling you, ask, you know, that you do take time for training. We're not saying kids have to figure out everything, but once you've taken time for training, then getting them involved in what are the solutions. But around screens, because let me just back up to say there is a tool that says decide what you will do. And, you know, because so often we're saying, get the kids involved, let them help problem solve. Sometimes you just decide what you're going to do. And like, for instance, one example is if you're fighting in the backseat of the car, I'm just going to pull over and wait till you're done. So with screens is one of those places where you have to use the decide what you will do a whole lot more. It's still best to get the kids involved as much as possible. We've got to have routines around screens. You cannot have full range of them. We are going to set what the times are. And this is just where parents are more firm. If the kids say, well, I want to be able to use them as much as I want, say, no, 1 hour a day. Or yes. I know one mother who's really strict about it, and that you could 1 hour on the weekends. But now that so to have these schedules around, okay, you can use it for your homework and coming up with whatever you can live with. Okay. How much time they can use it for recreation. And then make sure you schedule other things. You schedule time where everybody's doing chores together. You find times when everybody's cooking together. You find times when they have to go outside, or if they can't go outside, they do something active inside.
Right, I'll take the dog.
A lot more routines and getting the kids involved as much as possible, but then making, like for instance, you know, one of the tools we have is teaching kids about positive timeout. And instead of you go to your room and you think about what you did, which is such a stupid thing to say, because they're not thinking about what they did, they're thinking about what we let them create an area that feels good to them, that will help them feel better, calm down. And when we're creating that, we let them figure out, you know, do they want stuffed animals or, but no screens. Because everybody would want time out so they can go and play with their screens.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I think a lot of the screens also too is that parents don't put down their own screens.
Well, that's why the second side, help, my child's addicted to screens, yikes, so am I.
Yes, right? And because if you're asking them, that also means you have to put yours down.
Exactly, and we're all addicted, you know, it's just, it is. I mean, aren't you?
Yeah, I've been very conscious in COVID to spend less time. I have it clocked, so I have an alarm go off every so often to check my mail, but I have put my phone actually away, like out of sight, because it's too difficult. It's just too easy to constantly be checking.
It is, and you know, the other thing is I don't turn on notifications, because I mean, when I see how many of my friends, some of them are going to hear this, but I'm going to tell you, when you answer my text right away, you've got a problem. Because you're getting, as the minute you get a notification, you have to answer it.
Yes.
And so I don't want those notifications. But see, as adults, we can, even though we're addicted, we can manage it a little bit better. Kids can't. If they could sit and play Fortnite all day long, they would.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it also, I think parents have to own their own addictiveness, like you were saying. Yeah, so am I. Their own addictiveness before you can kind of complain about your child.
Right, exactly. And
it goes back to that modeling piece you talked about earlier.
Right. So we give a lot of examples of, like, you have a parking lot for the devices that goes in the basket, and to never let kids take them into their rooms at night. This is why they're not going to be getting much sleep, because they're up in the middle of the night playing with it. It's you know, when we write the book, we want to talk about all the advantages, because there are many, many advantages, like what we're doing right now. But it just really needs to be managed if we don't want our kids to, and if we don't all want to become zombies.
Well, what I've heard from, especially the parents, I think, of the teens, is that they, especially taking them away at night, it's like it's easier to let you have it than to argue with you. And that's what I hear a lot, like a parent saying, it's just easier. They don't want them on screens, but they also don't want the conflict.
Right. You know, one of the things that we have in that little book is an agreement that you sign, that you get. And I wish that more parents would do this even before they give their kids phones, but the kids are getting them younger and younger. And parents say, well, it's the excuse, it's for my convenience, so I know where they are, so they can let me know.
Mhm.
But they have to understand that they're addictive. If they don't understand that, then it gets too late. I don't know if you have seen some of those on YouTube. There's videos of taking a phone away from a baby. Like, it might have been.
No, I haven't seen that.
And the thing is, I would like to go look at it again, because my guess is that they're maybe 6 months old, because they're not walking yet. And they gave this to the baby, and when they take it away, the temper tantrum is not a normal temper tantrum. It is just, because these little kids come born with this thumb or whatever it is that they know how to swipe, and they see that. And the minute they give it back, it stops. You know, usually if a child's having a temper tantrum, even when they're calming down, it takes them a while. But with the phone, the child gets it back and it stops immediately.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's scary.
Yeah, that's not a typical response, right? I mean,
you know, there's a lot of things like that. Like, there was one going around not too long ago where a mother was trying to take a phone away from her daughter on an airplane, a teenage daughter, and that daughter just went berserk, screaming, and all the passengers were watching, and she was fighting her mom, and her mom was trying. It was just, yeah, it's
again, it goes back to, I don't think parents want to put up with that. But I think I hear you a little bit saying is if you set the boundaries and rules earlier on, like maybe even before you get the phone, for other parents who don't have teens, but if you set the boundaries around the phone and be consistent.
Right. But then still, because they're addictive, you have to keep going back and looking at it. And like, for instance, there are times, you know, it's time to shut it off. Do you want to shut it off, or do you want me to take it?
Again, that question format that you talk about, right?
Right, right. It's harder. It's harder with these. You know, in a lot of countries, they have, just like they have, what do you call them when they have drugs and they go to the rehabs?
Oh, the rehabs,
yeah. They have rehab centers in Korea, in South Korea, and in China, a lot of them, because they are recognizing how addictive they are.
Oh, rehabs for phone?
Yeah. For screen addiction.
Wow, for screen time. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because it can be that addictive, especially things like Fortnite and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's a commentary on society. So your kids aren't doing drugs and being addicted in that way, but they're addicted to something else, right?
Exactly. And you can see why I said let's talk about that later, because it's not normal behavior. Just like I've always tell people, positive discipline is not going to solve drug addictions. You need help. They need professional help for that.
Right. Well, even positive discipline, I mean, like you said earlier, it doesn't make the parent perfect. It's not going to make the child perfect, but it might make the interaction a whole lot better.
Right.
Right.
You know, another thing, Colleen, is that some people, every once in a while, I'll hear a comment, like in China. They've said, well, some people are saying that positive discipline tools are just tricks to get your kids to do what you want them to do. And so I wrote this whole experiential activity on tools or tricks.
Oh.
And because so we've got some of the basic concepts, like connection before correction, kind and firm, make sure the message of love gets through, helping children learn, feel belonging and significance. And there are several like that. And then I say, okay, now think of the tool you used, and what one of the basic concepts was missing. And if they say, well, I was firm but not kind, or I didn't make a connection first, or I wasn't thinking of having faith, you know, so whatever some of those basics are, and then say, yeah, they won't work if you don't have the basic concepts. And then when they go back and say, how would the tool look if you did it with the basic concept? And then they say, oh, it would feel different, it would look different. So.
Right, and it has to be the consistency too. It's not like you can just do it one day and then go back to how you were before and then go do it again another day. Like, there has to be consistency to get a buy-in really from the child.
No, doesn't have to be consistent.
Doesn't. Oh, okay.
But your kids will catch you on that. You know, see, this is what, you know, it's like, to be consistent, you would have to be perfect. And as a parent, you're going to lose it too.
Gotcha.
And so, you know, another one of my favorite stories that illustrates that is we came up with during our family, one of our mottos for family meetings is we're not looking for blame, we're looking for solutions. So one day I come home and there's a bunch of dishes in the sink. And so I say to my kids, who left their dishes in the sink? And Mark says, are you looking for blame or are you looking for solutions? I said, okay, you're right. And then they said, well, nobody would admit that they did it. And I said, okay, we'll put it on the agenda for nobody's solutions. And then they figured out that they would take turns once a week. But the thing is your kids call you on it when you're not. My daughter says, her little guy, before he could even say solutions, says, we need to find solutions, you know. or they'll say, you're not doing positive discipline now.
But at least they recognize it. I think that's probably the good piece there, right? They recognize it.
Oh yeah, but the thing is, like I said, you'd have to say your apology. Like another one of my favorite stories is, I don't know now I can't remember what I did to Mary, but she was so mad at me, and I even think I called her a spoiled brat. I was so upset at her. she went and grabbed her book of positive discipline and started underlining and wrote phony in the column and says, I'm going to tell Oprah on you. And so, you know, later I just said, I'm sorry. And, you know, the thing is, like I said, I really meant it. You have to learn to apologize a lot.
I think as
parents make mistakes.
Yeah, as parents, that's a necessity. It's because you're going to mess up.
Yeah.
Not intentionally.
See, that's why I don't like to say you have to be consistent. It's better if you are more consistent than less. You know, every once in a while, I remember when I was, right after I'd written Positive Discipline, and I would blow it, and I would just feel like a hypocrite, and I would cry to myself, I should just recall all those books. And she said, well, now, come on, how often do you do it? I said, probably only 80%. He said, well, that's better than
that's better than no percent. Right. And have you noticed that the trends in parenting are pretty much, I mean, the times are different, but the parenting really never really changes, meaning that positive discipline could have worked in the 1940s or in the year 2020, right? I mean, it doesn't, there's not just a time and a season for it, right? The concepts, they've always been important, but I think we've grown, but I think we can I don't want to say over parent right now, where, you know, back in the day, like, I think parents weren't thinking about children's feelings.
Right.
But now I think we overfeel, or we're too feely sometimes.
Yes, we absolutely. We do keep going from one extreme to the other. You know, even when Dr. Spock first came out with Benjamin Spock.
I remember.
And, you know, people were calling him too permissive, but you go back and read this book, it's not permissive. It's not. But it was just too hard for people who were believing in spare the rod and spoil the child, you know, which is, you know, the thing is, I've heard two things, and I'm not a Bible expert, but somebody said that that's not in the Bible. And that somebody else said that the rod was never used to hit the sheep, but to guide them.
Oh, right. You never hear about the sheep getting whipped.
Right. But just as the guide. And yes. So I do think but there are more and more books now that sound like positive discipline to me. They're really talking about, and see, the positive discipline is based on the theory of Alfred Adler and Rudolf Dreikurs, who were, you know, the first psychiatrists, you know, Freud, Jung, and Adler. And Adler is the one who said that all people need to be treated with dignity and respect, and really believed that we're social beings, and that the measure of mental health is contribution. And So we're very, very firmly based in those philosophies. And the brain science is validating all the things that we've taught. That's why we're great followers of Dan Siegel. You know, you're familiar with Dan Siegel's books?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, and they're just all based on brain science, and they just validate everything we do. So we love that.
And you can never really go wrong with kindness. I mean, leading with kindness, if you can, for the most part, I think is something to keep in mind. But again, goes back to what you were saying earlier about obviously we're not always going to be consistently kind, but I think that matters in parenting.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So with parenting where it is now, do you think it's too much kind of overprotecting our kids with and not letting them really
Yes.
marinate in their own feelings?
Yeah.
And work through them?
Yes. See, to me, you know, positive discipline is so much deeper in a lot of things that we don't have time to talk about, like understanding the 4 mistaken goals, you know, because when children misbehave, it's because they don't feel they belong and they're significant. And they usually choose one of 4 methods, either undue attention, misguided power, revenge, or just giving up. And so just about any tool you would talk about, you could see, well, what is the mistaken goal? And parents get into those mistaken goals too. So I just want to take the example of a child who won't do their homework. You know, some children, they might not do their homework because that's a good way to get undue attention. Some children might not do their homework because they're going to show you can't make me. Mm-hmm. But there are a lot of children who are not doing their homework because they are for revenge. They feel hurt. They feel that their grades are more important to them than to their parents than they are.
Oh,
that hurts.
That's hurt.
And so even at a subconscious level, they just might, well, then I'm just not going to do it, even if it hurts me. And then, of course, there's the child who may not do their homework because they really believe they can't. And so you don't deal with all of those children the same, depending on what their mistaken idea is.
Right, right. But as a parent, you'd have to really get to the understanding of why it is they're doing what they're doing.
That's why so many people love our mistaken goal chart, because it just goes all over and gives you, which by the way is available as a free download on our positivediscipline.com. So many parents and teachers have found that so valuable to keep on their desk or on their refrigerator, to remember that the true goal is belonging and significance. And when they don't feel they have that, whether they do or not, they choose one of the 4 mistaken goals, which is a misbehaving way to get that belonging and significance. So we're always saying, we love to use the analogy of the iceberg, where the behavior is the tip, but below the iceberg is the belief behind the behavior. And
bigger piece, right?
Yeah.
The behavior is that smaller piece.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we always like to deal with the belief as well as the behavior, because most beliefs are dealt with if you are both kind and firm. So,
which is the basic fundamental of positive discipline, right?
That's one of them, yeah.
Right.
You know, I have that's the 5 criteria. And first is, you know, that it's kind and firm, that it is, it's just terrible when I get these mixed up. It helps them learn, feel belonging and significance, and it works long term. Right. Because punishment works to stop the behavior, but what are the long term results? And then the next one is that it teaches valuable and social life skills, and that it helps children feel capable and to use their power usefully. So we always go back for every tool. Is it both kind and firm? Is it working long term? Is it helping them feel belonging? Is it teaching them what they need to use their power?
And where can people find your stuff? Is it on positivediscipline.com?
Right. And right on the front page is there's a short video of me talking about those 5 criteria of positive discipline that I just mentioned. And we have quite a few resources. Plus, you can look about just any behavior problem and put it in the search engine and find a blog on it.
Oh, nice. Okay. So it's kind of, it's a big resource, it sounds like. So they can get your material, they can read. And for the certification, is that for people, if someone wanted to be trained in positive discipline, would that be someone who has to be a mental health background or?
No.
Be a parent?
This is one thing we learned from Adler and Dreikers, that anybody can teach it. You can learn to teach it. And of course, because we teach experiential, our challenge has been, and we have found that we can do it, is we can teach experiential even on Zoom. We do the experiential activities where you role play, being the child, being the parent.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Technology comes in handy, right?
Yeah, yes.
Comes in handy. That's terrific. But so you don't have to have a background in anything in order to sign up for that.
No, because when you become certified as a parent educator, then you can teach other parenting classes. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot more training before you can teach the certification class.
Got it.
That's a lot. We have what we call trainer of trainers and then lead trainers. So
it's a lot. So there's quite a few steps to getting to where you want. But if you just wanted a certification, you can sign on for that rather than doing the training the teachers, right?
Right. And we have two kinds right now. It used to be live and our video training. The video trainings of Lynn Lott and I doing the live, and they watch that and they answer some of the questions. But now they can do it both online with watching just some portions of that, so they can see what it looks like live, but they can also then learn how to do it online.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, well, I'm good. So what I'll do for everybody who's watching or may come across this, I'll put all your details about positive discipline, where to find your information, which will be at positivediscipline.com. Mm-hmm. Okay, and if someone wanted to is there a way if they wanted to reach out, if they had questions, or is there a contact there?
Yes.
Okay, so that's all on that site.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Jane. I could sit here and talk all day. Really, I have so many questions. Do you have any books that are all your books out, or you have any coming out now?
Oh, what's interesting is let me just show you that. We have children's books too. Now this one is in Korean, but nice. This is a book that teaches about positive timeout when kids get upset, and what they can do, and how he creates his. And now the one that's coming out pretty soon, it might be a couple of months, is the anger wheel of choice, Sophie's anger wheel, of how to deal with anger.
I love the illustrations on that. That's beautiful. So you're talking.
I found a great illustrator.
Looks fantastic. And is that book out?
Yes, this book is called Jared's Cool Out Space.
Yeah. And where can people find that? Can they find that on positivediscipline.com?
Right, under the book section. And the one that is just about to go to the printer is the Sophie's Anger Wheel of Choice, which is just as really great, the same illustrator.
Oh, that's going to be great. That is going to be great. Well, I hope people will go check out positivediscipline.com, find out information about Dr. Jane Nelsen. And thank you so much for coming on and doing this with me. I really enjoyed meeting you, and I enjoyed, gosh, you're just like a wealth of information for parents that is so necessary. So necessary. So thank you again. And the book you'll see in the background, Parents Who Love Too Much, I was just disappointed to hear that is now out of circulation, you said?
Right. I think, I don't even know, we might have it as an ebook, but I'm not sure. Because the Positive Discipline brand has, if it had said Positive Discipline for Parents Who Love Too Much, it probably would have been okay.
That probably would have been a good tagline on that.
Right.
But that was a great book, and I'm so glad that it led me to you. I'm grateful to that Positive Discipline is out there for parents. I think more than ever, parents need some grounding and some help, and you know, how to just keep doing things better and differently.
Right.
Right. So thank you very much. And hopefully I'll have you back on again. And until then, stay safe and stay healthy. And thank you again.
Thanks, Colleen.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.